12:01, so it's time to start. So I'd like to welcome everybody.
We're not quite live yet.
Welcome everybody.
Good afternoon, we are now live. Welcome to the first meeting of the Berkshire Prosperity Board of the 2025-26 municipal year. My name is Jamie Beardsmore and I'm clerk for the meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, and can I remind all members to turn on their microphones when they wish to speak. The first agenda item is apologies for absence. I've not been informed of any apologies. Does anyone have any apologies to report? Oh, sorry, we've got Councillor Denise Gaines standing in for Councillor Jeff Brooks. The next item on the agenda is the election of chair. Do I have any nominations for chair?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Mary.
Do I have a second? Perfect, thank you. Can I ask if there are any other nominations? In that case, we'll put it to a vote. Is everyone happy to agree that Councillor Templeton is elected chair for the municipal year? That is agreed, so I'll pass over to our chair, Councillor Mary Templeton.
Thank you very much, and I welcome everybody here today. And we've got a very full agenda, so I'm delighted to be your chair for the year. Thank you. Item 3 is the appointment of vice chair, and I would like to nominate Dexter Smith to be the vice chair for this municipal year. Can I have a seconder for that, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? In that case, can I take it, please, can you show a vote for Dexter for vice chair for the year? Thank you, that's agreed. We then come on to the minutes of the last meeting, which was on the 17th of March. Can I ask if there's any corrections to those minutes at all? Anything to notice? None? Can I ask then, I will move them, can I ask that somebody second these as a correct record? Thank you, Stephen. Can I have everybody vote then that these are approved as a correct record? Thank you. We then come on to the declaration of interest, item 5, and we're asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary or affected interest in respect of any matter to be considered at this meeting. Has anyone got any interest to declare, please? Okay, can I just remind you that if you do during the meeting have to declare something, then please notify us so that we can add you to the minutes of the meeting. Item 6, urgent items of business. Are there any urgent items of business?
No, non-notified chair.
Thank you. I would then like to suggest there is someone we missed off this agenda, actually, and that is from a report from the Berkshire Business Board. So I welcome Jim Ray online there with all his wonderful flowers, and we suggest, if you can, Jim, if you join us after the next item, so before 7, after 7 and 8, then if you come on, and you will definitely be a standard item on every agenda from now on, and I'm sorry we missed you off this time. So if we go to item 7, which is the Frimley ICB, and I'm really, really pleased to welcome Dr. Priya Singh to come and give us an update. She is chair of the NHS Frimley ICB, and is going to give us a presentation on this very difficult time for them, I guess. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and delighted to be able to be here today. Thank you very much for the invitation and opportunity to be with you and together. And I suppose just to start by saying that it's such an important time. There are major reorganisations in both our worlds, health and local government, and it's really an important time for us to build on those principles that we've held true to for some time now, of really creating value together, of cultivating a deliberate cultivation of trust, of partners really committed to making a meaningful change. And so I'm delighted to be able to have time with you this morning and to just update you on some of those changes in the NHS world, which you will, to a great extent, you will know already as a result of our communications over the last few weeks. So just by way of introduction, I'm here as chair of NHS Frimley ICB and also as chair of NHS Buckinghamshire, Oxford and West Berkshire ICB. So I can give you the overview of from both systems perspectives. And as has been said, the NHS is changing. It's going through big changes to make care more joined up, fairer for everyone and more sustainable for the future. Three principles that we've all spoken about to a great extent since the ICBs first started, and ones that really ring true and will continue to ring true. As part of the upcoming 10-year health plan, the role of integrated care boards is changing. And these changes are happening, as I mentioned, along wider reforms across the NHS and public services, and we need to respond to them well. So there's a new focus for ICBs, and the NHS has set out a new blueprint for how ICBs should work. The guidance reinforces our role as strategic commissioners with a strong focus on improving population health, reducing inequalities, and ensuring access to high-quality care. It also signals a shift in how we operate, with some delivery responsibilities transitioning to providers and a reduction in the level of resource we are allocated. ICBs have been asked to reduce their running costs by approximately 50% by the end of 25-26 financial year. And this means spending no more than £19 per head of population. ICBs are also encouraged to work together across larger areas to deliver some of their functions more efficiently. And in the South East, we've already started working in this way and will continue to build on that. Plans for reform and devolution mean that new strategic authorities will be created. And I know many of you are working at pace to look at options within the geography. And we are very keen to understand your thinking as it evolves to ensure that we can be aligned to that and be as supportive as we can. There's a push for health and local government boundaries to match up more closely. So you will have seen that Sir Jim Mackey, NHS Chief Executive, wrote to all of us at the beginning of April following a meeting in March. And he set out the changes required. So much work is being carried out across the South East region to test and challenge the right size of our ICBs. This is in the context of NHS England being folded into the Department of Health and Social Care, something that will happen over the course of the next year to 18 months. Much of that work is being undertaken as we speak. And also there will be operating differences across all aspects of the NHS, be that regions, individual providers and ICBs, of course. The emerging way forward for us in the South East is the establishment of 4 South East ICBs instead of the current 6. The principles underpinning that are geographical boundaries which should pay due regard to local government devolution, with local authorities only having 1 ICB in their area, and with populations of no smaller than 1 million. In this context, the boards of Frimley ICB and Bob ICB have agreed to work together to create a new organisation covering this Thames Valley area. The proposed new ICB's goal is to improve health across the region and make sure everyone has access to high quality care now and in the future. The new ICB will focus its role as a strategic commissioner and build on the strengths of both existing ICBs. Together, Frimley ICB and Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire and Berkshire West ICB have submitted a joint plan to NHS England outlining our approach to coming together as one organisation, and these will be subject to political scrutiny and agreement. These are Secretary of State approved approaches. The new proposed configuration will require an adjustment to some of the Frimley southern boundaries, where we have part of Frimley's population in Surrey Heath and Farnham, which will align to Surrey and Sussex ICB, and our North East Hampshire residents will align to Hampshire and the Isle of Wight ICB. We're also working with the other ICBs in the South East region to maximise the opportunities of scale. So we're strengthening collaboration across the South East region to explore services that can be delivered more efficiently and consistently at larger scale even than the 4 ICBs. And by identifying functions that we can deliver once across the region, we aim to reduce duplication, enhance quality, and make the best use of our collective resources. This approach builds on a strong tradition of regional cooperation and shared learning, ensuring that every pound spent delivers maximum benefit for our populations. The national expectation is that these changes, these cost reductions, will take effect in the 25-26 year. And so we will be engaging with staff and partners to shape the new ICB between July and September of this year. Much of that engagement has already started, and we will continue to do that on an ongoing basis so that we can both ensure that the current year is as efficient and effective as we can possibly make it, building on the experiences that we've had over the last few years, and also build the skills and capabilities that we will need for the future. A joint transition executive comprising executive leads from both organisations oversees the transition and supported by a joint transition reference group with membership from across our boards to provide strategic advice, and local government is embedded in both our boards. These groups don't replace the statutory responsibilities, of course, of the 2 organisations, the 2 ICBs, which will continue to be in their form for the current year. We have 4 joint work streams that will be the transition programme for this work, and in all of them we look to partners for input and collaborative understanding of what will make us work well and what will make us be the right organisation to deliver health and care across this geography. So the 4 work streams are the operating model and organisational design, developing the future structure for strategic commissioning, our people and culture work, supporting staff through the transition and upholding our organisational values, our estates and finance, identifying savings to meet the £19 per capita target while maintaining good governance and good decision making, and communications and engagement, ensuring that clear, consistent communication is had with all stakeholders. This is, of course, my conversation here with you this morning is building on the letter that we sent out a few weeks ago, which set out much of what I've already covered, and I'm bringing you up to date with timelines and direction of travel. I very much hope that we can now have a conversation that builds out on some of those issues that are the things that matter to us most as we go through this period. I want us not to lose sight of the fact that the whole reason for doing this is to ensure that we are really competent strategic commissioners for the future health and well-being of our populations across the geography. And we will do that at a unit and a cost that is effective and efficient for the taxpayer pound. I'd be very happy, Councillor, to take questions and have a conversation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions at all, please? Well, I would like to ask a question. How does the hospitals count in for this? Because that's going to be what every resident wants to know. So when the ICBs all join together, what happens to? Because Frimley Park is is it going Surrey? Is it going what happens, please?
All the hospitals who are part of the current geography of the 2 systems will remain within the 2 systems. We've had no indication other than that, and the population flows into those hospital sites are really important, determining that. But as the population that goes into Frimley Park, for example, will come from 3 ICBs potentially, that creates an opportunity to align healthcare over an even wider geography, but the population can be confident of health and care services as they are now, and the purpose of strategic commissioning is to commission for change on the basis of really embedding neighbourhood health.
Right, thank you. Terry.
Thank you, Councillor Timpton. Thanks for coming this morning, and obviously it must be really challenging because you've only just really got over one reorganisation, certainly the one that affects the ICV for Bob, only to find that there's another one. And whilst I might support some of the reasoning around that in terms of efficiency and, you know, from the outside anyway, you know, it can often look bureaucratic to everyone, and breaking that down. So I know it's not as simple as that, so please forgive me, I'm not trying to say that. But it does concern me a bit, really, is that suddenly we're going to go from 6 to 4. We haven't really had much consultation about that. We've had one ICP in the Bob region, so Integrated Care Partnership, for anyone who might be watching online, which took an awful long time to happen. That was in January, I believe, and we haven't heard anything that we're going to have another one again. We still feel there's some challenges around particularly tackling inequalities that you talked about. And in our case in Reading, we still have this concern that we have the most number of residents to GPs. You know, we want to understand about, we're talking later, or there's a paper later about tackling in ill health and not in economic inactivity. We talked about addressing it earlier. Well, if you can't even get to a GP because there aren't enough of them, you know, that's quite a serious issue. So we all have to counsel ourselves, don't we, about the things that we're being asked to do. We're not quite in reorganisation, although some of us might be joining in, but we are in looking at devolution. But we mustn't take our eye off the fact that right now there's some considerable health inequalities. There are some real structural issues that need addressing, and yet here we go again into another reorganisation. So to cut to my question, I suppose, is I think we probably would like to see more consultation, particularly at councillor level. I know we're talking to council officers and staff. Some sense of understanding about how we continue to make progress in tackling the things we need to tackle and addressing the commissioning issues or the negotiations across into the private sector, which is the GP area, you know, and understand more about how that's going to play out rather than waiting another year for another reorganisation and feeling a sense of not making that sort of progress.
Please respond.
Thank you very much. And I think you echo what everybody is feeling. There's quite a lot of change in the whole environment, isn't there, in all of public services to a great extent. And we must not lose sight of now. But we cannot wait to change in order to be able to tackle what is tomorrow, but it's coming at us so quickly, isn't it? In terms of being really focused on delivering for now, I think that there is a really clear commitment to ensuring that we don't lose sight or traction on those areas of work that we've already committed to, and those are really continuing. At the same time, we've been building with partner colleagues across all sectors a really in-depth understanding of our resident population, some of whom will become patients from time to time, some of whom will become carers, but all of whom will be residents, some of whom will be our staff, etc. And to look at things from the point of view of the resident, not the organisational form. And that is what we will really be adhering to in this change programme. It is difficult for staff, and you're quite right, people have just begun to settle into their roles and responsibilities, and there is a real commitment to ensuring that strategic commissioning is commissioning for outcomes, and to do exactly what you were saying, Councillor Terry, to accelerate and be able to sprint a bit more towards those health inequalities through commissioning, not just for commissioning for now and delivery, but commissioning for the change that we need to see in order to create those 3 shifts.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mary. Dr. Singh, Slough is a real outlier in terms of health data, as you can appreciate, in this area. So though we're quite a small area in terms of population, the size of our local authority, we are comparable to the other Berkshire authorities, but you can see the real differences that there are in terms of healthy life expectancy and other problems like economic inactivity, which are probably related to health problems like obesity and mental health and all of those things. And we've seen since Frimley has taken over the management of Wrexham Park Hospital, some big improvements, but we'd like some reassurance really that the new ICB will be alive to the uniqueness of places like Slough and in particular rise to the challenge of our poor health outcomes, but also perhaps see that in quite a small area we seem to have a high density of problems, and so we might be quite usefully employed as an area where we could perhaps test out initiatives and things like that. So I'm trying to invite you really to put out a little bit of your store in terms of what you think might be things that would either reassure our local populations or at least areas like mine.
It's an invitation gratefully accepted. This is the crux, isn't it? I know that these are the areas that have the most deprivation, the most lack of trust in services, and therefore all of those things compound. They're all indicators of poor life chances, poor health, unhealthy ageing. And they're all exactly the areas that we need to tackle together, which is why I'm so pleased that coincidentally your paper later on in the agenda is very much around that, and it is our working together that will make that difference. The thing that has been really underpins all of our work together is the co-production at the start. Our ability to work together and to understand each other's perspectives on the life of our residents, and therefore to come together at the very start to really look at how we prioritise, combine, or at the very least align our resources so that we're spending for outcomes rather than inputs. And that's going to be helpful for us to do, and I think that's exactly where we will be looking, for example, as you say, for populations where outcomes are so vastly different across our geography, and access alone isn't going to change that. So there'll be a number of those areas where we really can do more together and to plan right from the start. And I think one of the things that's been very positive and will continue, because it's the underlying values of both organisations and of our work in public services, is the close relationship that council leaders have with healthcare leaders. So through the systems that we have, that we are a network of leaders across all of public services, and our geography will allow us to do that even better across those public services that we also need to engage with more. I don't want to lose Councillor Terry's point about the ICP. There is a real question about how we best convene together, come together, etc. I would invite us not to worry about how we label it, but just to do it. And I think that the work streams that you are already engaged in present equal opportunities for that. Once we have mayoral footprints, we will have other guiding principles for some of that convening, and that's to be welcomed. But in the meantime, we must not lose focus on coming together in order to be specific around the outcomes that we want to achieve together.
Thank you. Councillor Conway.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Dr. Singh, for the presentation, which was very, very helpful. And I suppose the theme that's emerging in the questions and the conversation is really about how we, in a world of change, keep focused on delivering outcomes that are needed for our residents. Inevitably, however, one of the big questions in my mind is about the relationship between the boundaries of the new ICB and the boundaries of the Mayoral Strategic Authority. So what is your understanding of how these two processes, which are working in parallel, are going to be connected?
Councillor, I look to you for guidance.
Well, that's very kind of you, but I'm not sure you're going to get a great deal of it at the moment.
If only we knew.
Yes, I think if I just could elaborate a minute. You were talking about the areas of the current Frimley ICB that would effectively be lost to the Frimley ICB when you move into this new amalgamated ICB. So are we to assume from that there is an assumption that ICBs will cover whole counties?
That's one of the guiding principles, that ICBs must have due regard to local government footprints. And the two programmes, the two change programmes, local government and health, are both politically led programmes and will have political approval to the two programmes. There doesn't appear to be an appetite to bring the timelines of the two together, and the NHS programme is on a timeline now, which is the current year and the coming year, which is why we are progressing with the plans to be in the best possible position to be able to provide services well. And we are very keen to stay very close to local government's decision making around the footprint that you are adopting or wanting to align to, etc. And we will always be alive to that. And there are certain geographical realities that make things reasonable to build on, and the Frimley Bob geographies are that base reality of how we are already working together, but more importantly, how people live, how they work, how they travel, how they flow, those things.
Thank you. Jackie Yates.
Thank you. Dr. Singh, I'm sure nobody around the table is going to disagree with those principles you talk about in terms of what everybody wants to achieve, the efficiencies for taxpayers, addressing the inequalities, and engagement with local authorities and health partners. I think the reality, though, for some of us in the Bob ICB is, since the inception of Bob, it has been fraught with difficulties, let's say. And there are very stark inequalities across place, and place was something that the last guise of ICBs was very keen on. I understand from the current chief exec of Bob that place is something they want to now move away from, presumably because of the economies of scale concept. But place is really important for all of the reasons we've talked about in terms of where those inequalities are and what the different issues for population health are. I think a lot of us go to a lot of meetings with health colleagues, chief execs of the ICB, the hospitals, etc. As a chief exec in a local authority, I would reflect that it is incredibly difficult to try and switch the dial and shift the thinking because of how the funding flows and currently operates to address some of those inequalities. And so I know in my area of Reading that we haven't got some things that happen in Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire that the data says we should have, but nobody can figure out how to turn something off and move resources over here. And my big plea as we move through what will be another big restructure, and I accept it's difficult for the staff going through it, but let's not forget our residents who have been waiting a long time for their issues to be addressed too. We can't afford to wait and stand still for another 12 months. And so how we get more active engagement which sees impact for residents over the next period whilst this restructure is going on is incredibly important. Thank you.
Jackie, thank you. You're heard and echoed. We absolutely cannot lose sight of this year as we build for next year, and that is an absolute commitment to that. Yes, it will be difficult to run two processes at once. It is always that way. But you're absolutely right. Some of what we need to do is de-layer how we do things and how many opportunities there are to come together, and to move our focus from the inputs to the outcomes, to aligning resources between us and across the sectors to the outcomes that we agree are the outcomes for our residents. There is a really key focus on exactly what you were saying about the subplace of neighbourhoods and what that means for really targeting around outcomes and understanding pockets of population who live very differently, even though they are not more than across the road from one another. And that's the key, isn't it, to understanding and to align the resources in a much more refined and targeted way to create those outcomes that we are looking for. Absolutely heard, Jackie.
Thank you. Councillor Wernham.
Thank you very much. Yes, you know, I completely support the three principles you outlined. However, it's more about the implementation of the middle one that it really concerns me, because I think to a certain extent Maidenhead is a bit of a forgotten area at the moment as far as Frimley goes. To get to Royal Berks or to get to Wrexham Park, our two so-called nearest hospitals, is a minimum of half hour, 3/4 an hour, and that's only if you've got a car. By public transport is pretty difficult. I mean, the story I hear over and over again, we've got our sort of community hospitals, St Mark's, which gradually is having services withdrawn from it. Recently, a conversation with a resident doesn't have access to a car. To go for a half-hour appointment with her daughter means a day out of school for a child and a day out of school for her, because she uses a complicated pattern of buses to get to Wrexham Park. Those services need to be at St Mark's. And I think everybody thinks Maidenhead are a very affluent area, and yes, we are an affluent area. But what gets lost in places like Maidenhead is we have not just areas that on the indices of deprivation are deprived, but we have very small pockets. We'll have one house here, one house there. And life is made pretty impossible for them to access a hospital. Dexter, they've got Upton, and I completely support putting a serious unit at Upton, because it's right in the heart of Chalvey, which is one of the most deprived places in Berkshire, probably. So, but let's not forget those sort of areas in more affluent areas where people are really suffering and they have no access to healthcare. St Mark's more and more is just being used as a sort of GP's overflow, with services not being there. And I suppose what I'll be looking for in any new organisation is a real commitment to develop services at St Mark's, putting in maybe a CDC or just higher level health provision there, so people in Maidenhead actually have access to what's supposed to be a fantastic health service. So that's the sort of commitment I'm looking for, that we're not going to be forgotten about again.
We've had a number of conversations, haven't we, about St Mark's, and I think that you will have seen from the data that we've spoken about, the provision for primary care services has increased significantly, and has been, as has the sort of minor procedures or the minor complaints issues through 111, and at a cost and in a cost-effective way. So I think that is a really important principle for us to continue to build on. We must be able to deliver services really cost effectively, because what matters to people is to get that access, and it is to have it close, and it is to be able to get it because it's affordable for us to be able to provide. So we'll continue to work on that and to understand our data that allows us to invest in the places that really need it and in the ways that really need it as well.
What does that mean?
We've had the...
Sorry, what does it mean? Does that mean no or yes?
It certainly doesn't mean that the walk-in centre at St Mark's, which we've spoken about a number of times, will reopen, because the data tells us that we can provide more and better access through a number of other ways, and that is working. We're very happy to continue to have that conversation. I appreciate that you don't agree.
This will be the last question, I'm afraid, but yes, Councillor Dixon.
Because you've got such a challenging task, halving your budget effectively, do you anticipate that there is going to be a transfer of responsibilities and, to an extent, budgets to local authorities, or is this going to be more in terms of devolving down to GPs in our local areas?
That's a spot-on question for us that has not yet been worked through, and we're working it through with local government partners as to what that means. So a number of areas in the model ICB blueprint, a number of areas were identified where there's either duplication or the potential for duplication, or the statutory responsibility could be carried out elsewhere, better, more efficiently, more effectively. We are not at the stage where we have and no ICB is at the stage where it has worked through all of that. But it'll be worked through together, because that's what we really need to do. It's safe transfer if it is transfer.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for coming and answering all the questions, and I think we can all say from this we've all got to work together, because it looks like really an uphill effort for all of us to make sure that we really do get the best for all our residents wherever they are, and help that they all have the access to healthcare and well-being that they all deserve and want. So thank you very much for coming, and keep in touch.
A pleasure, and delighted to keep in touch. And it really is. I know it's hard, and it's going to be hard for us all, because we're in the same economic envelopes. It just pushes us really to make sure that we're aligned in our spending, because we have to get the benefit from each other's spending in order to really make a difference for our residents. And as I say, only some of them will become patients sometimes, and many of them actually will become carers, etc. as well. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. Now we move on to an extra item, which is Jim Ray on the Berkshire Business Board. Can you give us an update, please, and welcome?
Thank you, Mary and the whole audience. By the way, your system is excellent. I can hear everyone wonderfully well. I hope you can hear me well. If you can't, wave or something, and or otherwise instruct me. I'm aware you've got a packed agenda, so I wanted to give a very brief input. The Berkshire Business Board, just a reminder, we have representatives from major employers in sectors such as life sciences, so medical and healthcare, but also agri-tech. We've got representatives from professional services. Equinix were there from representing digital and data centers, and we had a tour of their excellent facility in Slough. Also the defence sector, as well as visitor hospitality, Creative Screen, and we were there with our further and higher education partners as well that are important across the region. The only sector that was missing, and we're still looking for a representative from that, is the telecoms sector, and we're working to get a representative to for that very important sector. And then lastly, but very importantly, both the Chamber of Commerce, the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce, and the Business and Growth Hub were both with us, partnering, bringing their perspective and expertise into the meeting. So our meeting, what we've been doing since the last Berkshire Prosperity Board, and this culminated in a meeting last week, was very much about examining the growth potential of certain sectors across Berkshire and trying to understand what is required to unlock this growth, including, for example, areas where we need to be investing in skills or in infrastructure. So every sector was given an opportunity to respond. We've had responses from the majority of sectors. That work is still quite embryonic and incomplete. But yeah, we're looking to pull that together over the summer in our next meeting, which is planned for September. The business board will refine its thinking, simplify and clarify, if you like, some of those areas that we think are the most impactful and the right things to do for Berkshire. So yeah, I wanted to make sure this was really front of mind for you all, because the areas that we believe will make an impact in terms of economic prosperity for Berkshire, there will be a role for obviously the 6 unit authorities to play in that, to partnership, to work in tandem with industry to unlock those. So I didn't want that to be a surprise. And as I say, in our next meeting in September, we will be working that in more detail. So yeah, just a very brief input. Thank you, Mary. But wanted to make sure it was remained visible for you, and we remain very much open to dialogue. And if any would like offline discussions as well, to make sure that the key questions that are front of mind for you all are addressed, then happy to hear those inputs. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anyone got any questions that they'd like to bring? Councillor Smith and Councillor Conway.
Just a quick question. We understand that the government's interest, particularly around our potential strategic authority area, includes a development corridor between Oxford and Cambridge. And I'm wondering whether any of the discussions that you're having with businesses across Berkshire are throwing up examples where businesses are thinking about supporting these development corridors. We've heard similar mention of a sort of Silicon Valley type of development along the M4, and we know also that there's an initiative by the government, which happens to be it would appear located around Swindon, to fund incubator work in innovation and research. Is that being discussed by Berkshire businesses? Do they have visibility of it? Are they likely to become more pan-Berkshire or pan-strategic authority area as a result?
So it's a great and quite pertinent question. A lot of these sectors, of course, are working locally and also working in an international context, right? These major employers. So they're aware of the strengths and weaknesses of different areas, for example, and are curious about how we organise ourselves for maximum benefit. If you ask my personal opinion, would we benefit from being part of a strategic authority? Yes, we would. We haven't had speculative discussions around if the geography was X, what would the benefit be? If the geography was Y, what would the benefit be? Partly because none of us are just in the Berkshire Business Board are decision makers in that process. And if one thing that business is, it's very pragmatic about focusing its energy about where it can make a difference. So right now we've been trying to answer the question, if we're working together across Berkshire, what can we do that will make a difference quickly? Because if your business is thriving or otherwise, it's not about what happens 5 years down the line, but it's also about today. That said, privately, we've all got opinions and would welcome, as I say, to be part of the strategic authority. But I'm happy to have conversations offline about the pros and cons of different geographic options.
Thank you. Councillor Conway.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Jim, for all the work that you and your colleagues are doing on the Berkshire Business Board. It's greatly appreciated. I wanted to really just get your initial thoughts on not the footprint of a new mayoral strategic authority, but the kind of asks we might make of central government, whatever the boundaries of that new mayoral strategic authority are. Obviously, you talked about key infrastructure being required for continued growth in the future. I think we would acknowledge the whole of Berkshire and the wider Thames Valley is a great engine of growth for the UK economy. And our role, I think, is to try and ensure that that growth continues to be a major contributor. So we're looking, obviously, for inclusive growth as the key to the way forward. Infrastructure can usually be understood in terms of transport projects, rail links, road improvements, and so forth. All of that, no doubt, important. But I am very much of the view that, and I think this is not just my view, that affordable housing is a key ingredient in what we should be asking for from government, support in, particularly from Homes England, in securing the amount of funding we need to be able to deliver affordable housing in the future. It seems a major constraint on future growth is the problem of affordability of housing. And in an area like that, ours, I don't think we realistically can expect to bring down the price of market housing. So I think I see the future as securing a greater proportion of affordable, with a capital A, housing. In other words, discounted market housing, shared ownership options, affordable rent and social rent, which is the most valuable of those housing delivery mechanisms. Would you and your colleagues see affordable housing in the same way as I see it, as a key infrastructure ask that we make of government?
I think from our perspective, there would be one of the benefits about being a strategic authority is strategic planning frameworks and flexibility. And some of that is around, for key sectors, what is your employment space? Where will that space be attributed? And what are the right zones, if you like, to develop for key sectors? But the other part of it is, of course, availability of workforce, and not only in where they live, and cost of living is important to everyone, of course, but also how do they get to and from those locations to locations of work. So yeah, that a slightly bigger response than maybe the question was asking, but yeah, I think one of the advantages is being a strategic planning authority.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much for joining us then. Our next meeting is on September the 15th, so I hope you have your business board before that so you can come back and report to it. So thank you.
Super. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you. We now move on to item 8, which is the economic landscape review, and George Famalico will actually present to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This follows on actually quite neatly from Jim's presentation, because you'll see that part of the ask for additional funding is in fact to support the ambitions of the business board. But to set the context very briefly, members will know there's been significant change over the last 12 months. Government funding moving away from the LEP, the adoption of your Berkshire economic strategy, and then, as you've discussed this afternoon, discussions around strategic authorities and their roles. And this paper seeks to set out a proposal to respond to that changing position, really focused on getting greater capacity in respect of oversight, commissioning and delivery of the government programmes, but also, as I've said, the support to the business board, and also over programmes and projects that are coming out from government and responding to those in the best possible way. On page 12, the recommendation is set out for the board. It includes allocation of £100,000 of one-off funding, which would be from the interest on the retained balances, and that funding would be used to enhance what is a current structure within the county area at the moment, which is the BDOG function, which is the Berkshire Economic Development Officers Group. And that funding would enhance that role so that it can respond to some of those challenges that I presented. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Are there any questions? Councillor Conway first, and then
Well, I welcome this report, and I think, from my perspective, it seems eminently sensible to ensure that the Berkshire Business Board can continue its good work, and we can continue to support it properly. The running theme of all of our discussions today has really been the challenge of keeping going on the things we really want to pursue here, and at the same time recognising the landscape around us is changing. But the danger is that if we focus too much on the landscape changing, we lose momentum in the things we want to do here. So I would very much support this recommendation that we go for the use of the interest, some of the interest on our accumulated reserve to do that.
thank you. Councillor Terry?
Thank you, Councillor Templeton. I suppose it sort of struck me really that you used the word one-off, and I know we've discussed that before, but clearly this is going to be something that's going to take some time and go over multiple years. And I suppose perhaps an earlier discussion, then we might otherwise have thought about the continuing investment in ensuring that we've got the capacity to respond to what's becoming quite a big agenda. And just to slightly abuse the agenda, just because it's been on my mind, I was at a business event a week ago, actually, and this concept of social housing as infrastructure seems to be a growing concept. I'm not really sure I quite understand it. It just seems like calling it something else, to put it somewhere else. But so there's some suggestions that, along with the pros and cons, as there always is about when you move something, that there may be some opportunity for us in thinking of it in that way, and perhaps a request for future meetings, maybe to come back and think about what does that concept actually mean? Does it mean anything? And is it something that's worth thinking about for us? But all of us have such high, the cost of housing is so high, and our land availability to build more social housing is challenging, and I speak for Reading, we're doing our best, I'm sure you are too. But I think it's something that, clearly does need to be considered alongside, just as Councillor Conway said, our economic growth just won't happen unless we're really clear about all of our people being able to live somewhere where they can access, they can afford, and then access work is critical. Otherwise, all we're doing is bringing more and more people in. And I don't have a problem with that per se, but I think we need to understand that if we want to reskill our own residents or give them the right opportunities when leaving school, then they're only going to stay if they can afford to stay. So excuse me, Councillor Templeton, just a little plea that perhaps we just could explore that concept a bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to answer that?
Well, I suppose two parts. The first is the funding is absolutely a one-off funding, and we would report back to the board in terms of progress. There may well be additional asks for further funding, but it's, I think, all relevant to the changing landscape, as Councillor Conway has pointed out. In terms of housing, we have a dedicated housing theme, and maybe that's for that theme, just to take away that ask. and consider what can be done in that space, and as you say, tackle what is a key issue in terms of economic growth.
Thank you. You're right.
Thank you. Yeah, I suppose I just want to raise the yes, using the interest to pay for it. That's fine. It's just that I don't want people coming back and saying, oh, we've run out of money in the interest thing, so now we need to come to the councils to ask for extra money. So I just want to flag that up. And this is one-off funding, and then what happens next year when you come asking for it again? Just to re-emphasise, Windsor Maidenhead doesn't have any money, so we can't do anything. Just following on from Liz's point, completely agree. So upgrading the housing that's being built in Windsor Maidenhead to turn it into social housing, it's not going to happen. Developers aren't going to do it because the viability argument every time comes in, and they can say, oh, it's not viable to build affordable housing or even better social housing. So the only way we're going to do it is money from the government, from Homes England. I think it is part of infrastructure, because unless you build the right kind of housing, you're not actually... What's the point of growth if it's not to help our residents as they are? We need to provide them with homes. We need to provide them with skills updates so they can cope with today's society, and we need to look after our current residents as well as have new people in. But growth, first and foremost, must be about helping our existing residents.
Thank you. The recommendations are on the screen, and there are 4 of them. I'd like to move them on block. Is there a second to those? Councillor Conway, thank you. Can I have a vote then, please, whether we endorse these recommendations? You vote yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's carried. That's recommended as agreed. Thank you very much. Good little shift on there. Right. Can we now move on to item 9, which is the Skills and Business Hub, please?
Thank you. I'm just going to share my slides. We hope they work. Jamie and I did try earlier on, and they did seem to work. So, excuse me. There we go. I can see them. That's perfect. So I just want to start off by saying thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to come back. We've been here previously as Berkshire LEP, but I'll explain why, some of the changes as I go through the presentation. But I'm conscious most people have met me before. I'm the Chief Executive of what is now the Skills and Business Hub, and my name is Alison Webster, and I'm joined by our Director of Business Development and Skills, Martine Baker, and we're going to do a bit of a double-hander. There will be time for questions, but this is very much a kind of overview. I'm really conscious that you've got a much more detailed document, the prospectus, which shows some of the data that we're sharing here at a pan-Berkshire level by individual local authorities. But obviously I'm conscious of time, so if you would like to have more detail by local authority, just as we've been able to come out and visit you in the past and some of your cabinet members who are very interested in some of the things that we support, we would be very happy to kind of do that this summer. I think we did it last time around, but we'll be very happy to come back. So thank you for the opportunity. And as I said, I've introduced myself. I'm just going to move on now to the next slide and introduce the company, really. As I said, we were formed as a small medium enterprise in in December 2011, and we've always had representation from the 6 Berkshire local authorities on our company. We were previously Berkshire Local Enterprise Partnership, but with the move of the local enterprise partnership functions to local government, last April, so that was in April 2024. We felt it would be helpful to differentiate between our continuing role in terms of the three main programmes that we support pan Berkshire with the endorsement of the 6 local authorities and this board. So slight name change, but obviously the mandate is very much still based on making sure that we drive economic growth and productivity right across Berkshire. Just moving on to the next slide. What I'm showing here, we are mainly going to be talking about our 3 main programmes that we deliver with your endorsement. And in a moment, Martine's going to go into a little bit more detail as to where the funding comes from and also what we do. But I think it's also helpful to see, because we have the opportunity to deliver those 3 main programmes, we can also add extra value. And you can see in the key milestones that we can do some leverage in terms of the activity. That means that we can do more to support economic growth. We always say it's working from the classroom to the boardroom. So we work with early talent, we work with workplace talent, but we also support the small and medium-sized businesses throughout Berkshire. But we're going to go in a moment to a little bit more detail on those. But obviously it's showing that journey with the 3 significant government-funded programmes, the leverage that we're able to do to actually deliver more. I was going to say for less, but actually not for less, but more for the same funding. I'm going to hand over to Martine now to go into a little bit more detail on each of the programmes.
Thank you very much. So, as Alison alluded to, we have 3 main government-funded programmes that are funded in different ways. So we start with our Careers Hub programme, and that's funded through the Careers and Enterprise Company, who are the national body who delivers on behalf of the Department for Education. And that funding that we receive part funds the delivery of the Careers Hub, and then we subsidise the difference to around the value of around £100,000 per year. What that funding does is it allows us to go and work in schools across Berkshire. We work in 99% of the schools. We have one who chooses not to work with us, which is absolutely up to them. We work in 100% of the pupil referral units and the SEND schools. And what we do, we have our own enterprise coordinators who go in and work with the careers leaders and help provide the careers service. And then on top of that, we also work with local businesses. We have enterprise advisors who are volunteers from local business who are directly paired with schools, and we manage that programme. We run a number of projects, and then ultimately we are supported by what we call cornerstone employers, who are employers in the local area who work very closely with us on that delivery and are part of our steering group. So that's a funded programme that we do deliver on input into schools. Our next programme that we offer and deliver is the Berkshire Growth Hub, and that is part of the new National Business Growth Service that was launched last week. And what we do with that is that we receive funding to deliver small business support directly to small businesses across Berkshire. And we do that in a number of ways. We do that in some face-to-face delivery, workshops, and it's all around sort of centralised support. And with the new service that's being launched, we'll also be moving towards more support around the high street and retail, which is a current government focus at the moment. And we work with businesses, very small businesses, who want to start, run, grow and upscale. We are then the managing authority for skills boot camps across Berkshire, and that's very much an output-led piece of funding. So it's funded through DFE, but we only get paid for the actual outcomes. And what we do is we work with local delivery partners, training providers, ITPs, and it's part of the government Skills for Life programme. And we make sure that we're running skills bootcamp programmes in all the identified sectors, from the LSIP, from the local research, to make sure that what we're delivering is fit for purpose. And those age 19 plus can come onto a skills bootcamp programme, either funded partly by their employer or funded through the programme, and learn a skill that is ultimately about getting them into work and getting them into a job. And then in addition to our sort of core grant-funded programmes, we do also, and this is just worth a mention, is that we also work on the DFT-funded Levi programme at the moment. So some of you will know that we have a project manager that we host and funded by the 6 local authorities through capability funding. And that project is there to look at the local infrastructure and the EV charging. So we manage that as well as part of what we do. I'll give you back to Alison.
You've got one.
Oh, I've got one more. I apologise. In addition, the one thing we didn't mention, which is not a grant-funded programme as such, but we also manage the Thames Valley Funding Escalator. So that was some Growing Places funds that was allocated back in 2015. That was invested into an evergreen fund that is managed by the FSE Group. And that is about investing in Berkshire in businesses. So the FSE managed the programme. We're part of the steering group for that. And it was money that was presented to the LEPs originally through MHCLG, and it's a revolving fund. So that money doesn't sit within our bank accounts, it actually sits within the FSE, and the local authorities do have some input through the accountable body into how that is sort of invested, and there is further opportunity for that as well. So that's an 11.3 million investment in an evergreen loan currently. Now I'll hand you back to Alison.
Thank you. And it's kind of, this slide is trying to set out how do we make the decisions in terms of what sectors do we support, what are our targets for investment, and just to kind of show you here that what we do, I think people know that we worked with the Prosperity Board to develop the Berkshire economic strategy. So we look at the priorities and the sector priorities in the economics in the kind of economic strategy. We also look at the Local Skills Improvement Plan, which is another government-funded route to work with businesses to look at their sector capability and skills gaps. But we also look at the 6 individual local authority strategic plans. So we do actually quite a lot of research on you, and we therefore have identified that there are 5 main pillars that we're able to make direct contribution to. So in terms of how we influence the delivery of the programmes, as I said, they are informed by all of those strategies, and we then target how we can support things like economic development and business support, education and skills development ambitions, supporting some of your partnerships and how you want to collaborate, supporting work with vulnerable groups. We know that's really important for all 6 of the local authorities. But also, how do we drive productivity and greater take-up of both innovation and more sustainable business growth options? And I'm just going to touch here briefly. I'm not going to go through all of this slide, you'll be pleased to hear, but I just wanted to here to show you some of the impact right across Berkshire. Just to say, some of these figures relate to academic years. Some are financial years, obviously referring to the financial year just gone. So actually, just have a look at what the data period is referring to. So things like their work with the Careers Hub, that's run on an academic year. So the data we've got at the moment is just for 2 terms, not for the full 3. But I just wanted to kind of pick out some of the highlights. So obviously our work in school reaches a huge number of students. In the academic year, almost 82,000 students we have reached through our work. Last year, so that's the last financial year, the Growth Hub worked with, and this is individual businesses, so often many of the businesses we saw multiple times, the minimum engagement time would be 3 hours. Obviously, many businesses work with us for much longer than that, but we engaged with 1,314 local small and medium-sized businesses. Since the formation or since the creation of the funding escalator, what's really interesting, it is a revolving loan fund. The fund is only a fairly modest fund, but we've invested £22 million since 2015, but that has levered £63.17 million of private investment. So it kind of really amplifies the level of that public support. And last year we delivered 50 skills boot camps right across Berkshire, but this year we've secured extra funding and investment to deliver a further 150 skills boot camps. And this year we've also targeted some of those areas where we saw that there was a mismatch in terms of geography. So there was a lot of digital skills delivery in Reading. So we have actually kept some of those delivery partners, but we've also brought new delivery partners in and said, you've only got a grant from us if you deliver in Slough, because we recognised that that was a bit of a cold spot in terms of the take-up for those digital skills, although there's a need there. So we do kind of work in really quite an agile way in terms of making sure that we're meeting local need. Just moving on, you'll see here, this slide really tries to kind of set out the work that we do. And you can see that we meet and we exceed government targets. And where grants are not yet complete, which in some areas it's because of the point in time, we're on target to do so. Now, obviously, there's more detail in the prospectus that we provided as a background paper, and as I said, there's detail in there at local authority level too. But just to, again, to pick out some highlights, our growth hub has helped more businesses than the government contract required us to do last year, so we exceeded that target. Through our careers hub work, a higher percentage of schools in Berkshire have what is deemed to be, there's Gatsby standards, careers education standards, but they call it the Gatsby Excellent Careers Education Programme, and we've got a higher percentage than other areas in England. And learners on our skills boot camps attend and achieve more highly than the government expects. And again, just to pull out some of those, our course attendance rate is 93.82%. The government target is 80%. And the dropout rate that the government works to, this is an England-wide national standard, is 20%. Last year, our dropouts ran at 7.3%. So we are, as I said, either exceeding or meeting or are on target with all of the government grant expectations for you. This slide is kind of trying to, I suppose, highlight how, and I know this came up in the paper that George has just covered, the way that we work in a very collaborative way. But obviously we're a small, medium enterprise, we're not for profit, and we are very much partners with our local authorities. Kind of collectively, you own 48% of our business as local authorities. But you can see that we're able to make a difference through our delivery record. But also because we're a small, medium enterprise, we're kind of quite agile and we're nimble. That's something that we're able to kind of get things kind of going quite quickly. So just to give you one example, we were the first part of the UK to deliver Wave 6, as the government called it, DFE called it, of skills boot camps. So we were straight out in April delivering, and that meant that we can maximise the drawdown of funding for training into Berkshire. There are some parts of the country, some of the local authorities where they are the managing agents, they're only now actually going out to tender for those contracts to deliver from September, but we are already delivering for you. We've got those really strong bonds with your local strategies, and obviously through work with local partners. And as I mentioned on the roadmap, we can lever the connectivity of programmes and our kind of delivery, which gives us the opportunity to do things in an altruistic way, such as being able to subsidise, recognising, I know that's been mentioned in terms of some of the financial difficulties with some of our local authority partners. We know it's not feasible or reasonable to come to you or to go to schools to ask for the financial match for the Careers Hub, but we are able to find it through the leverage that we do with our three main programmes. And this slide just is a bit of a highlight in terms of, I'm sure you'll understand a lot of the requirements of the government programmes, they're nationally let grants and they have a national standard and they deliver on a functional economic area, which is Berkshire. But whilst many of the requirements that of the programmes that we deliver are set by government, there are always areas where we can work with you, where we can look at your strategies, where we can tweak around the margins. And this is starting to pull out where we can and do work with local partners to influence what we deliver pan-Berkshire and to shape some of the national programmes. And my final slide is just a snippet really of some of the case studies. This is a very small selection of the testimonials and case studies. Again, I'd refer you to the prospectus if you want more detail, because you'll find much more detail. You'll find feedback from all of the individual local authority areas. So please do spend time. Don't just listen to the presentation. I'm conscious you probably all had the opportunity to look at the prospectus. But if you do want to come back and ask any more detailed questions about your local authorities, we can either pick them up here or we can meet at a later date. But thank you for your time. And again, thank you again for the opportunity to join you today. And we'll be happy to report back on future progress.
Thank you both, Alison and Martine, for presenting here. Has anyone got any questions at all?
I have a very particular question that jumped out of me at me looking at the documents, but it might be that you might want to tell me the answer another time. 99% of schools, but only 93% of schools in Reading, whereas it's 100% of schools engaged in the careers stuff elsewhere. Is there a particular reason, or is it, if it's a particular school, perhaps I don't want you to say that today, and you can tell me afterwards, but I'd be interested to understand that we are, you know, slower engagement than elsewhere.
I think we'll take it offline and I'll provide the information to you. It is purely optional for a school to be part of the programme, and some schools have reasons why they choose not to, but very happy just to pick that one up.
And I think it's fair to say that if there's any influence that local authority councillors could bear to encourage schools to work with us, we'd be very happy to have that conversation with you, Councillor Terry.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Jackie Yates.
Thank you, Chair. Alison, I just wondered, in terms of the Growth Hub, it talks about 1,528 jobs having been created or safeguarded. Now, clearly, from a growth perspective, safeguarded or created are two very different things, but I couldn't see any breakdown specifically of that anywhere, and I may have missed it. So I just wondered if we knew how many actually were new jobs created as opposed to jobs that have been safeguarded.
So that's a really good question, and we do have that data. I don't have it at my fingertips, but I can certainly, because we are required to report on both of those. But normally the way that the government would report would feed back in terms of the national reports is a combined figure. But I, off the top of my head, I think it's about 65% are new jobs and the remaining are safeguarded. But I will get you the exact figures, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you both very much for the slides and for the presentation. And it's all very impressive. Thank you. Can we now move on to item 10, which is Connect to Work? And can I invite Nikki Phillips to present the item, please?
Hi, everyone. Okay, I've done a couple of slides, so let me just share my screen. Give me a second. Okay, there we go. So hopefully you've all seen the paper that we submitted. So this was really just to go through, I guess, a couple of things on it. So one, it was to note what the ask is from today. So it was one that we're here to ask that you note the progress we're making on the Connect to Work programme, and that the tender exercise is due to commence in late June, with service mobilisation looking to be around November time. It was also really to ask for an endorsement of delegating authority to the accountable body, which is us, Wokingham, to begin the tender exercise for the Connect to Work programme. So that'll be then following on from obviously executive approval, which is being sought around the agreement for how we're going ahead with the 6 local authorities. So providing we have agreement from them, it was looking for your, I guess, endorsement to delegate authority to us to start the procurement process. So I've got a little bit more information just around the programme in case anyone had any extra questions or sort of wanted any further clarification. But in terms of who Connect to Work is for, it's for anybody that is a disabled person with a disability or long-term health condition, and somebody that meets one of these criteria. So there are 12 kind of groups. So, offenders, carers, ex-carers, people armed forces, people that are at risk of serious violence, people that are young carers, people that, all those people that we know have significant barriers to employment are eligible for the Connect to Work programme. And then in terms of what, again, it looks like in some of, I guess, the split of things, the way the programme is structured is there are 2 types of supported employment programme. There's the IPS and SEQF. If you're not familiar with what they are, they're both supported employment programme types, but one of them is slightly more intense than the other. So both programmes say you shouldn't have a caseload of more than 25 candidates that you're working with. But if you're on the more intense one, which is the SEQF, actually those numbers are lower. Both programmes support people to move into work and take that holistic view, taking into account mental health and physical disability. But the more intense one perhaps maybe has more of a link towards learning disabilities as well. So there's 2 programmes, both offer that really intense hand-holding integrated support programme. We're doing our split, which is what DWP have advised that would suit most local authorities, that 75% are going to go through the more inclusive one, and we'll have 25 that are going through that really intensive level. We also, again, following DWP guidance, the programme will support 85% of the people on the programme will be out of work, so they'll be economically inactive people, but there'll be 15% of people that are actually in work. And the point of that is that there are some people we know who have jobs, but actually through their health conditions, their perhaps chaotic lifestyles, that actually keeping that job is really, really challenging. So what we want to do is also work with some of those people to say, right, you've got that first step, you're in work, but actually let us support you, let us work with your employer, let's make sure that that situation doesn't fall apart for you. So that's kind of a bit about what the programme, I guess, looks like. There are quite high and challenging targets from DWP around getting people into work, but hopefully with the level of intense support that is being offered, and also that holistic part that makes up what is so special about Connect to Work, the fact that it integrates with all the health provision, actually the idea is everybody works together to support that individual. So these figures, now they may slightly move as we go through the DWP approval process, so they're not 100% set in stone. However, the kind of profile is relatively there. So this programme will support this number of people each year. The idea is that when you're at peak, so that's your annual target, across Berkshire, it's about 884 people that will go through. It ramps up and sort of to year 3, which is when we're at peak enrolment, and then it tails off, okay, towards the end. People that are economically inactive have a year's worth of support, which again is why you see it tail off. If you're in work, you have 4 months worth of support. But as I said, those figures, they may slightly change as we go through the approval process. So where we are with kind of getting there to delivery. So this is just a very high level sort of summary of, I guess, some of the stages and things we've going through. So we've got the procurement timeline, and then a little bit around, I guess, some of that governance of where we're presenting, and here today fits into that programme. we are going through, so we're in the final stages of producing our delivery plan. We are looking to share with everybody our procurement spec by the end of this week. And then those two documents we will be submitting to DWP on around the 27th of June. And we look to then commence our procurement process on the 30th of June. So what that does mean is, because of the timelines being so tight, we are going through approval with DWP at the same time as we've actually put out our procurement process. So that is a slight risk. However, it's one we feel really confident on because we've been liaising with DWP throughout this. DWP have in fact seen every section of our delivery plan, given feedback, given comments that we've then incorporated and written into it. So we feel in fairly a good place that when we submit the delivery plan, DWP there might still be some tweaks, but they're not going to, hopefully, touch wood, say that the whole thing is completely misaligned, because they've checked each section so far and given feedback. But what it means is we will not be able to go ahead with the procurement until we hear back from DWP. And DWP are saying it's around a 9-week process. But again, it's one of those things, it could be a lot quicker, it could be a little longer. We just don't know. So we've aligned it that we think we'll hear from DWP around early September, which is around the time that we should be at a point that we've then done our procurement process. We're able to then appoint a provider. And then hopefully we will then move forward to sort of that contract negotiation and mobilisation and working with our provider to start delivery in November. And then just a brief one on where we are. So as I said, we've been working with Slough, who have been the subject experts on sort of putting together a lot of the design of the Connect to Work programme. We've also, as a accountable body, been writing various sections that fall to our sort of responsibility. Procurement is something we're leading on, and something that, as I said, we're moving forward with, the spec. We're preparing the tender invitation documents. We're also arranging all the evaluation panel to take place in August. We're trying to get that all booked in because aware of summer holiday dates, bottoming that out. And then afterwards, there's just a few next steps that we obviously need to be thinking about and mindful of coming forward, that once we've got past the 27th and we've submitted it all and we've started our procurement process, actually, there's still quite a lot that we need to be doing. So there is that whole governance piece. So we've wrote a governance sort of, I guess, structure, but what we need to do is now go ahead and set those groups up, create all the terms of reference and put all that into place. There's also socialising our idea and our scheme with all those different health partners that people know Connect to Work is coming, but they might not fully understand exactly what it is. And if we want this to be fully integrated, then we need to start doing some of that groundwork before we launch. We also need to recruit a new team. So we will be having some various people like a programme manager and various different roles that will need to support the programme. So yeah, and then just again, some of that sort of paperwork and etc. that we need to put in place. So I didn't want to do a really long presentation because I wanted to allow time for any questions. So I will stop sharing. And over to you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Werner.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm very supportive of this programme. This is, something good that can come out of the Prosperity Board. Just out of interest, it's not criticism, but why was Windsor and Maidenhead 98, the lowest of all of them?
So those figures are not something that we decided. It was something that was given to us as indicative from DWP. So they worked out that split based on looking at our sort of deprivation, economic inactivity figures for the area. Now, they said that's a guide. It could be changed. However, we chose to go with what DWP had said, because otherwise you have to have a very good case and reason as to why you've deviated from that.
That's fair enough. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Vicky?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, it may be in the fine print and I didn't quite get to it, but I'm just conscious, particularly with those clients who have got more complex lives. Is the model one where there is kind of a key worker working with that individual? Because great that we've got partners involved, but if this is just a referral out of individuals to other organisations, different bodies, certainly when I've had experience of this in different places, it only really works when the trust is built up with the key worker, and it's the key worker who's doing the prompting and cajoling to get people to take up those offers with other partners, and the signposting. So just a question.
No, I absolutely agree with you. You're 100% right on that. And that's what this is. So we will be looking to procure a provider, and they will then employ employment specialists. And as I said, because it's all about that intense piece of work, actually, you know, an advisor will only have a caseload of maximum 25 people, so that they can really get to know and support them at whatever stage they're in. So yeah, absolutely. It will be very much hand-holding. And the idea is that you have that holistic, so that, you know, the employment advisor can really focus on moving somebody into work and what their barriers are. But because that holistic, they'll maybe have a housing officer. They can go, right, you've got a problem with your housing, let me talk to your housing provider because I'm aware of who that is. You've got a mental health issue at the moment, a bit of crisis maybe happening, let me talk to your mental health advisor. So it's about bringing all those people that are working with that individual together in that holistic way, so that, you know, the employment advisor can really move that person forward into work.
Thank you. Will Tutley.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to draw members' attention to the fact there's a background paper which we circulated only last week, but which looks very much in more detail at the interaction between health and employment, and includes some tables on the position for each Berkshire authority. And I suspect that the answer to Councillor Werner's question sits somewhere in that table, but what we wanted to do was to make sure that we all had access to that data and could analyse, connect to work, and indeed get Britain working, conscious of the position in each authority.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? None? Thank you. Then the recommendations, please, there's 4 of them, and they're listed there. Note the progress of the development of the delivery plan, service specification and procurement strategy. The tenders exercise is due to commence in late June, with service mobilisation in autumn. Then the endorsement, there should be delegated authority to the accountable body, Woking and Borough Council, to begin the tender exercise. And then also to endorse that the agreement of delivery plan, service specification and procurement strategy to the accountable body, to be delegated to the place director from each individual local authority. So those 4 are there on the board now, so that's good. Okay. Councillor Conway?
Well, I'm happy to either propose or second those.
Okay. Proposed by Councillor Conway, seconded by Councillor Smith. Right. Anyone else? Anyone comments? Can I have all those in favour, or raise your hands, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation and really encouraging work. Well done.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. We now move on to item 11, the budget and themes update, and I invite Graham Kettle and Rhiannon Hayes to present, please. Graham going first?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think you have the papers in your pack. I believe it starts on page 56.
We do indeed. Thank you.
Do you want me to share on the screen, or are you okay?
Be good if you can share, but we have them. Thank you.
Okay, so if I take you through initially, this is the position in terms of the funds held by the accountable body. Hopefully this is information you've seen before. We're holding in respect of a number of different funds, business rates, retention, connected to work. There's some initial money come through for the development of the plan. And probably the newest update from what I've delivered to you before is the interest on funds. So you'll see that through 24-25, the funds gained 425,900 in interest, which we are holding, and you will see in the later slides, starting to use on some activities going forward. The balance as at the end of March is the 9.2 million. That hasn't changed. There's some funds come in and out, and I'll explain to you further on, but in essence, that's still the amount of funds that we're holding on to as accountable body. So if I take you on to the next slide, this breaks down part of the funds we were held. You'll on the previous slide, you'll see the line about business rates retention. These are specific schemes already agreed, I think, a couple of years ago, for the individual local authorities to deliver. We're just waiting on the last proof of spend, and we will pay those monies across as the schemes are completed and the proof is confirmed. So you can see there's 4.6 million, which contributes significantly to that 9 million that I explained in the slide before. Please stop me any time through if you wish to ask any questions. The next slide just shows the government funds that were given in 24-25. So you'll see, and again, hopefully this is information you've had before, the core funding grant covered economic strategy, the LGF and GBF program management, and the business board. We also received £2 billion for the skills boot camp. In the main, those programs were delivered by the LEP. The one different one there you'll see is the business board, and those are funds we are continuing to hold to be allocated going forward. This slide explains the ongoing revenue expenditure to run the Prosperity Board and to look after the funds. Again, this is in line with information we've provided before. So some program management costs, some about accountable body costs. They've been a little bit more than we initially expected because of understanding some of the legal position and financial positions. You'll then see the business board income expenditure. We haven't spent that. Only £690 was spent. So you'll see that we've carried that forward into next year. And there was a one-off expenditure of 19,000 on the economic landscape review. And that's funded by the 6 local authorities paying the £10,000 contribution and a 10.25 from the UK SPF. The business board grant income that you will see, and I explained in the previous, and £27,000 of the interest of that £400,000 interest that we've used to just to make the two numbers balance. So moving on to the current year, that was the last year. The current year, these are the estimates that we expect those similar costs to be for this year. You'll see there's some additional lines again, which hopefully are information you are aware of. The enhanced BDOG costs of £100,000 is planned. That's funded again from that interest, which will continue to build while the funds are in there. So if none of those funds are taken out, we'd expect something similar, although interest rates are falling slightly. There's some specific project work as well, and you'll see that's funded by the local authorities, the business board grant that we've carried forward, and use of the interest on balances. That still would leave 253,000 of last year's interest sat there, and as I say, that continues to build. That was the position as at the 31st of March. And this was just really to recap on the grants from government that we've received this year. We didn't receive the core funding grant this time, but what has come in is significant monies in terms of the skills boot camp, and there's some extra monies, additional monies, 1.9 that's coming for the boot camp around construction, which the LEP are delivering, the growth hub, and the careers and enterprise work, which is also paid. That's actually paid directly to the LEP rather than through the accountable body. That was just to give you sight of the funds that the government have been paying this year and that we've allocated to work. So that's my slides. Hopefully that was understandable, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions, anyone? None? Right, thank you. Now we have Rhiannon.
And just before we start, I was just going to ask Graham if you wouldn't mind sharing the rest of the slides, because they're at the end of your presentation, if that's okay. Thank you. So I'm just going to give a highlight update on progress against the 6 work streams that we promised from the March meeting. So if I start with the sector development, and just a reminder that that's the lead for that is West Berkshire Chief Executive and Leader, with support from Slough Borough Council. What our priorities were for that was developing a sector plan for priority sectors, analysis of key issues facing sectors within Berkshire, development of Berkshire Business Support Offer, our mapping available support to identify specific requirements. So we're working on that at the moment. A business survey is being carried out by BDOG to all local businesses. Many of the questions are about Connect to Work, but also there are many sector development questions in there. We heard Jim earlier talking about quite a separate survey that's being undertaken by the Business Board, talking to our businesses about business growth. We're also scanning the general external environment and government announcements to see if there's any funding coming forward for specific sectors, and we know there's something coming through on the Arts Council at the moment. BDOG, being the Berkshire Economic Development Officers Group, are continuing to map and build that work up, and we should have something ready for people going forward by the next meeting. Strategic infrastructure, that's the leader of Reading Borough Council and the Chief Executive of Reading Borough Council are working with West Berkshire on that. And the key objective here is to seek and identify strategic transport infrastructure projects. They're currently reviewing a list of strategic projects. The quarterly meeting of Thames Water has reached a bit of a hiatus because at the moment they've postponed it because of they're quite busy with their activity at the moment. And importantly, the Digital Infrastructure Group are developing their strategy that looks at a broadband availability across Berkshire. So that again will be something that we'd like to bring to the group fairly shortly. Employment skills, leader and chief executive of Royal Borough, along with support from Slough. The major project there is Connect to Work, and that has, I have to say, the amount of work involved with that has to be all-consuming. Just the specification that we were talking about earlier is running to 90 pages in size, so both Slough and Woking Borough Council accountable officers are working fully on this, and just mention that in relation to resource and how sometimes the external environment is driving us on these projects. So we've given an update on that. So I will move then next on to, I think this is the last one, can it be? Have I missed some sections here? I've missed accessible and social housing, and that section we talked about as well, and when it was brought up by leaders earlier. So I won't go into that too much depth, but one of the key actions that we need to do, which is on the horizon, is engage with Homes England. But there's a group that's being brought together just at the moment to work on that. Our key areas there is that partnership development that we need, but also quite importantly is the issue of specialist housing need, which I think impacts all of the local authorities at the moment with increasing demand going forward. Apologies, I did this this was just to trick you actually, Graham, sorry. So health and inequality and and equalities, another key thing that we've picked up today. So leader of Slough Borough Council working and Borough Council working on this. The priorities around working age, ill health and economic activity has been picked up by Connect to Work, and reviewing the national data. So quite a lot of work has been done with this, working with Slough and with our health and wellbeing team in Wokingham. So they've developed slide decks, they've made connections between between them and the employment skills work stream, and also have developed a briefing note between the local authorities and NHS touchpoints across Berkshire. So again, that information will be forthcoming to this group. And I think the final one, just to confuse you, is the last slide, Graham, which is a net zero. This was Chief Executive Leader of Bracknell working along with a Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. So a really key priority there was isolated to be the carbon literature across Berkshire, Retrofit Berkshire, the Berkshire authorities working together to deliver the local nature recovery plan. And I'm pleased to say that there's some really good progress made on all of those areas. In particularly, a really strong partnership has been built up with the University of Reading, and that is really helping us drive and deliver some of our outcomes on that. So apologies for me mixing up the slides, but that's it.
Thank you very much. Really impressive. Any questions? None at all? Jackie Yates.
Sorry, I was curious on the housing one. It talked about a strategic partnership being developed. I was just curious as to who that was with and how broad-ranging that was.
So certainly I think the principle of that is essentially the Homes England connection that Rhiannon has mentioned before, but not only with Homes England but other RSLs that are in the Berkshire area who could form that partnership with us. So the partnership being those groups, agencies, associations that can further our affordable housing cause essentially, but very much Homes England part of that, and very much those are key RSLs that work across the county area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone? None? Well, thank you very much, both of you, for that presentation, for keeping us so informed. I now come to item 12, which is the date of the next meeting, which is the 12th noon on Monday the 15th of September. Summer's over, oh God. Anyway, Monday the 15th of September, and we'll see you all again, and thank you.